And you are live.
Okay. Thank you everyone for joining us today for today's audit committee meeting. I'm sure it's going to be as engaging as usual. I'm calling the meeting to order, and I believe we have a quorum, so we can proceed.
Elise, could Regent Wright, may I take a formal roll call, please?
Okay,
Thank you. Regent Wright.
I'm here.
Regent Bud.
Here.
Regent Ryan.
Here.
You have a full load, and we have a quorum. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Pam. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes from December 16th, 2020. It's been a while since we met. So I'd like a motion.
So moved.
A second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. The minutes are approved. And next, I'm going to turn things over to management so we can proceed with the next agenda item.
I think I'm going to go first because I'm going to deliver the APA, turn it over to Belinda. We're sort of conquer mode this time of year with more audits going on, and we're all handling different areas of that. Audits that the APA is advanced form right now that I want to touch on briefly. One is there's an audit which is in draft form of Eastern Connecticut State University, covering the fiscal years ending 2019, and so they're catching right up. They're pretty current, right? Being essentially for a year and a half in arrears, which is about as seen the APA being. The audit of the was, in my view, generally uneventful. The findings that they came up with will come up again about community college audit, which I'll get to, and that is that they are concerned about the way how adjunct professors have prior to paying them. This is an issue that in audits going back a number before my time, certainly an inherited issue. We had tried to put in some different. Yes.
Excuse me, Ben, I'm so sorry. I don't know if it's my on my end or on your end, but it's like I lost some words in what you
I did
said.
too.
Okay. I heard something about the adjunct professors, but I missed some pieces of that.
Okay, I'll step back. Can you hear me okay now? I don't have much. Hang on.
It's just like every third word I'm missing.
Okay, let's try again. I've muted everyone who is not speaking, and Ben, that might give you a little bit better audio. Okay.
Can you hear me okay now, Pam? So the one item that I missed in the Eastern Connecticut audit, because it occurs, has to do with how we document the work performed by faculty prior to paying them. I'm sorry, can you hear me clearly on this?
We hear you, but you're getting words dropped, like the word work the first time didn't come through, and then there's a lag, and then it's tough to understand.
Sorry, it's
It's not your fault. I think it's the system.
here at the office. I should be home where my internet works great.
Is it just Ben that's doing? I'm in the office too. Can you hear me okay, or are the words dropping from?
Now, Melinda, we hear you clearly.
Well, why don't I take things out of order? Come back to me, log out and come back in and see if that improves.
Okay, so I was going to provide a management update, and overall, the year end is going very well for all three, the colleges, universities, and Charter Oak. Since the focus in the past 2 years has been on community college year ends, just wanted to report that we have hired a new director of accounting for the colleges. She has been assisting with year-end and post-closing process, so I feel very good about the college financial statements and year-ends this year. The accounting team has been very busy with complexities of COVID-related funding sources, but I'm confident in the timeliness of financials. I've also been in contact with the foundation management teams for those foundation audits that were delayed last year. They are confident in the audited financial statements being timely as well this year. Lastly, as previously reported, the Magnet School at Manchester Great Path Academy will no longer be required to be presented as a component unit in the financial statements this year for the colleges. I was also going to do a quick overview of some of the changes that are coming to the financial statements in the next year. Grant Thornton is here and they are going to do an overview as well, so I will be brief. GASB 84 and 87 are the two accounting pronouncements that we'll be focusing on. GASB 84 is for this year, GASB 87 next year. And GASB 84 is fiduciary activities, and this will require us to present the activity and balance sheet of our custodial accounts, such as student activity funds, on the face of the statements, as well as a statement of fiduciary net position and changes in fiduciary net position. And we don't anticipate any problems with implementing this. GASB 87 is leases, and that will require us to record all leases on our balance sheet, as there's no longer a distinction between operating and capital leases. And this will take some time to implement. We across the system have begun compiling data and information to ensure compliance with the standard next year, but we just anticipate that to take quite a bit longer. So that is underway currently. And that concludes my report.
And
Ben,
Ben
if
is
you-
back.
Yeah. I believe you're muted.
Ben, are you muted?
Ben is muted.
Is he?
Yeah, I can see it
Yeah,
on my
he is.
screen.
Pam, can you unmute him?
Okay, here we go.
Okay.
My technical glitches. I hope you can hear me. So there are two audits to cover briefly that are pending. Connecticut State University. They had a few relative potential findings around inventory of supply and purchasing issues that the Eastern is a remedy. The one which is, I think, of impact is has to do with documentation verification that adjunct faculty have performed work. This is a long-standing issue for SCU. Our system, it's very difficult to. We don't pay. We pay adjuncts, and we don't have a time and in place for adjuncts. So we're develop a new approach to done by adjuncts. That will be something that we are working on for the colleges, but we'll also work with universities to ensure that that is addressed. We certainly agree that we should confirm that we're paying all of our employees, including adjuncts. The other more received a first draft of an audit for the community college covering at the same period, fiscal 19 and fiscal 20. It has quite a number of findings. Some of work with the auditors to from the audit, because we think there are of identifying information. There were some challenge backup information during the time that they were conducting the of the number of people who were working remotely and housed on campuses. One impact to this committee in particular has to do with the state law use of CA to provide service and effort for patients. There is a statute.
I'm sorry, Ben, I missed a statewide use of. And if Melinda, if you know what that is, would be helpful, because it just dropped.
Oh, I'm-
Would you like to come to my office to present?
Maybe I should do that. Yeah, I'll come and join Melinda and I can use her connection, which seems to be working better. Forgive me for that. I'll be right back.
I also, Elise, had a question about that issue of paying adjuncts. I'm not sure whether the documentation was to substantiate that they had worked, or was documentation on our side that we didn't have properly done. I'd love a little explanation.
I was trying to take notes and I missed, some things dropped. I had something prior to paying.
I missed some of the adjunct stuff. I really would like him to be more specific, or maybe give an example which will clarify what the adjunct payment issue was.
Yeah,
Right.
Ben,
I'm
I'm
back.
sorry, we dropped some things, so I know this is like, number 3, but if you could just give us some background, because we lost some of what you said.
Okay, so
About-
this is on the adjunct pay issue. So the way we, in the past, there have been audit findings in the colleges and I believe in the universities as well that identified where we did not confirm the work. We didn't have essentially the supervisor signing off that the adjuncts had completed their work prior to paying them for the full semester. So we've developed, or we attempted to develop, there was an attempt to develop a system a few years ago that had some technical implementation problems that would have required the academic supervisors of the adjuncts to sign off that they were indeed teaching the class at some point before the final payment had been made, so that in the event that they had missed half the semester or the class had been canceled or something like that, that there would be an opportunity to catch that and recover any overpayments in the remaining payments during the year. That system is a little complicated, and there has also been a little bit of a challenge getting the making sure that the right people who are familiar with the adjunct work are able to do that verification. But we're working on a new approach. The shared service that we have for payroll is now engaged, and we will use a single entity performing payroll processing to enable us to enforce the review of those pay records in a timely way. So it's because we pay them by the course and not by the hour. It creates some special challenges for us. It also, frankly, is the academic supervisors are unaccustomed to performing the role of payroll verifications. So we need to instill a little bit of culture change there to ensure that they are doing that work in a timely way. So this is an ongoing challenge that we will try to take on. Yes.
The question I have, did you have any example that made you think that this was a problem? In other words, did you find out after the fact that in fact they'd been overpaid in any event?
No, there were no examples of overpayment. It was simply a question of failure to find documentation that the work had been verified before pay.
Like an internal control issue as opposed to
Correct.
financial.
Although I will freely concede that we have lots and lots of adjuncts, and the course schedules are adjusted at the last minute with often enough that an internal, this is not a superfluous control. This is a control that is important given the size of the organization and the dynamic nature of class scheduling, especially late, as you run right up against the beginning of a semester. Some classes get canceled for lack of interest from students, or other classes get scheduled, and we need to make sure that those adjunct pay records are accurate. The other issue that I wanted to call your attention to is the issue about how we pay foundations, or how we pay staff of CSCU who provide work for foundations. Many of the foundations at our institutions do not have enough unrestricted revenue to support staff that is necessary for them to perform their goals and our shared objectives. I mean, we rely on foundations to undertake fundraising on behalf of colleges and universities across our system. And we often provide staff. So the director, the vice president of institutional advancement, or whatever the title at that particular institution is, will serve as the director of the foundation as well. This was identified by the auditors as a violation of state statute. However, we believe that that an attorney general opinion, well, a series of attorney general's opinions from 1995 and having to do with Yukon, and then a follow-up opinion from 2007, which indicates that the 1995 opinion also is relevant to CSCU, indicates that there are specific conditions under which it is appropriate for state agencies to pay for foundation employees' salaries, provided that the agreement contains certain provisions, and that the work that we are paying one of our employees to do on behalf of the foundation is work that the foundation is performing on our behalf, and that's reflected in our agreements. So we are now, the legal department is going through all of our foundation agreements across CSCU to identify any concerns with those agreements and whether or not those, in order to make sure that we're complying with the Attorney General opinion that we have in hand. So this was at first very concerning to us, because if in fact we are unable to support the staff of our foundations, a number of our smaller foundations will be unable to continue to have any staffing at all. And once they become fully volunteer organizations, we're concerned that they would not be able to meet some of the needs that they are fulfilling for our institutions. So we're very, we believe we have an approach to addressing this concern that the auditors have raised. We're hopeful that they will accept our interpretation of the Attorney General interpretation and its application here. But that's an area of particular concern, because there's no, if the auditor's view continues to be the case, we would need to seek a legislative change or wind down some of our foundation operations. So we're very hopeful that this new approach will be successful. And then the other issues, I would say, are there are a number of issues around payroll and human resources management that are largely going to be resolved, that reflect the conditions prior to the establishment of a payroll and human resources shared service organizations in the colleges. So the college, a number of issues where they identified, and I'll give you an example of that, is number 15. There was a community college that had failed to advertise for the hiring of a part-time university or college educational assistant. So a part-time temporary employee. They had not advertised the position to the public and had hired an internal candidate. That was not a requirement at the time, because each campus had different human resources policies regarding when things were advertised and what have you. Those have been superseded by system-wide human resource policies implemented through shared service those policies no longer would allow the activity that was cited in that particular audit finding. So there are a number of issues like that where the consolidation, implementation of system-wide policies, especially around human resources and payroll, will address the concerns that were raised in the audit. So that's an area of wide application. The only last issue is around where there were.
Ben, can I ask a question? The system-wide policy supersedes the local policy. At the time that the system-wide policies were implemented, was there any work to ensure that at the local level, the policies were aligned? Was this something that was missed, forgotten?
No. I think that the policies are, I mean, I'm not sure it's a board policy. Policy may not be the correct term of art here. The procedures that were put in place with the implementation of HR shared services prevents those things from happening. The campuses cannot recruit and hire an employee without going through the shared service organization.
so it didn't
And that
happen.
shared service organization is implementing those procedures and has actually, I'm going through it right now to hire Pam Coleman's replacement after her retirement, and they have a detailed set of procedures that they enforce upon community college hiring processes. So there's no, I mean, obviously there may be issues that come up in the future, but many of these sort of individual campus policies are no longer relevant and could not be implemented through the procedures and the systems we have in place now. And the last area is dual employment. This is they cited for failure to have written agreements and for a number of other issues related to dual employment of CSU staff. This is an issue that I know the HR shared services and management throughout the colleges has been trying to address. It is a complex one because the additional employment agreements are, we're bound by those agreements. They are enshrined in our collective bargaining system at CSCU, but we are very much going through the process of identifying where those agreements lack appropriate written agreements, where dual employment agreements have other concerns, and we are frankly trying to eliminate the use of dual employment within CSCU where we can. I know that it is a far less common practice today than it was 2 or 3 years ago, and we'll certainly address the specific issues that were raised, but because there were several related items on dual employment, I thought it deserved a mention. But there, in many cases, not only in the areas of the HR, but there are a number of areas where the organizational changes we're making as we move to one college present us with opportunities to implement better controls to ensure that appropriate procedures are being followed, both in HR, in payroll, in financial management. There were a couple of areas, a couple of items around the use of Core CT, which is our HR system of record for the system, that some of the campuses had previously been using Core CT and had been entering information about employees in ways that was inconsistent with one another, and made it difficult for us to obtain management information that we needed. But those are something that I know we are working to clean up, and we now have centralized management of our Core CT records so that there is a team of folks at HR who are responsible for all the entry of personnel transactions in Core, so that we will not have those circumstances develop in the future. And we're now in the process of cleaning up any inconsistencies that were there that we've inherited from the past approach. So I while it's the audit for the community colleges had about 30 recommendations in the draft. We are hopeful that we will be able to fully address a number of those, and that the more complex ones that I mentioned around adjuncts and foundations, we're working to come up with permanent solutions to those concerns.
Thank you, Ben. Do we have any other questions from the regents? No? Then I think we can go on to the next agenda item.
I'm turning the computer back over to Melinda.
Okay. So next in order, the bond audit, 2020 bond audit is next on the agenda.
Yes, we have Carolyn Kurth on the call for that.
Oh, okay. I see her name, but I don't see her.
Good morning. 1 second. Hopefully you'll be able to see me in just a moment. There we go.
Okay, I see you.
I was keeping myself muted and my camera off while everybody else was presenting. So my name is Carolyn Kurth. I'm with Cohn Resnick, and we are currently right now in the process of the construction audit for 2021. And I really just wanted to hop on the call this morning to reach out to the entire Board of Regents to find out, is there anything of concern that you would want to talk to me about, right? I mean, we don't have anything to present per se to the audit committee. We've just begun the audit. In fact, our field work kicked off this week, right? We officially went from planning phase to field work phase this week as of yesterday, and everything is going according to the timeline. We have had no issues working with management, with the team. We are working completely remotely again this year for this audit cycle. But I really just wanted to reach out to the Board of Regents and find out, are there any areas that you might have any concerns with or want us to pay particular attention to, or just do you have any questions really?
So I'll ask Regent Ryan and Regent Bud if you have any questions. No, it's so early in the process, Carolyn. I appreciate that you came on, but it's once the process starts and you have sort of more information, I think it would be helpful to hear sort of how we're progressing in these audits.
Absolutely, you were exactly right. We don't have really anything to report back. There's been no delays in the start of the audit or anything like that. Everything is going exactly the way it should be, which I'm sure is what you like to hear. But it was really just to make ourselves available and to say, if you had any concerns, anything that you wanted to make sure we paid attention to, we would, in this planning stage or field work, that we would make sure that we incorporate into our procedures. But really, it was just to give you the opportunity to ask us any questions in case you had any. But other than that, this is really, really quick.
No, no questions. So thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. If anything comes up at any time, feel free to reach out to me directly or any member of my team, and we'll address any concerns you might have.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And I believe Grant Thornton is up next. So I'm going to turn things over to Claire and Matt. You guys are on mute. Claire and Matt, you're on mute now.
Hi. Can you hear us now?
Claire, we have some substantial feedback issue. Matt, you're on mute now. If anyone is watching on YouTube at the same time you're on WebEx, you need to leave the YouTube site.
Dale, sorry about that. Did that work?
Absolutely. Thank you.
I'm sorry. So this is what we get for trying
I'm
to
trying to
do
be
this
tech
in
savvy
person.
and yeah, just failing.
So I just wanted to say, I'll start off the discussion that we're having with you, first of all, by saying thank you for reappointing us as your auditors. I know it's been a while since December when you made the decision to reappoint Grant Thornton. We were very excited about the news and we're very appreciative of the support that you've provided to us. So thank you to Elise, Aviva, and Joanne. We appreciate that vote of confidence, and we're happy to spend the next 5 years working with you and with management as well. So thank you again for reappointing us. With that said, I've got Matt here with me, Matt McCormick, Audit Manager, and then we also have Chris Bradford on the line, part of the team who will present the plan for the audit. And then you can't actually see, but we have a few interns that are around the table, audit interns from various schools in Connecticut. We're trying to help them get an appreciation for what the profession is all about and get some experience learning what it's like to be a public auditor. And so they're just observing, and we'll spend a little bit of time after this meeting sharing with them a little bit about what the meeting was all about and things like that. So we're happy to have them on the phone with us as well. So with that said, again, our objective today is to go over our plan for the audit. As Melinda alluded to earlier, we're in the very early stages of the process with the 3 entities. And we'll just kind of give some highlights of things that are new and different this year. Knowing that you had the materials in advance, we aren't planning on going through every single slide in detail. A lot of the areas of focus that we will incorporate into the audit this year are very similar to what they have been in the past, because for obvious reasons, we're going to test the material items. So we're always, every year, going to test tuition and fees, state appropriations, capital assets, things like that. So we'll only focus on the things that are really new and different this year. And feel free to interrupt us if you have questions on our comments, or if we passed over something that was in the written documentation that you'd like us to elaborate on. So with that said, I will turn it over to Matt.
Thank you, Claire. Good morning, everyone. Great to be back with this team. I'm going to pick up on this is page 6 of 39 of the agenda that was distributed. This is just going over our audit timeline and scope. So following.
Matt, if you wouldn't mind sharing that document, I've made you a presenter. We do have almost 24 people watching on YouTube,
Oh, yeah, sure.
so that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yep, sure, happy to do that. Screen 1. Trick.
What do I do?
I think just double click it. Yeah, I think we're good. Just confirming that's visible now to you all.
Yeah.
Did they say yes?
Yeah, they give a thumbs up.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't see that. All right, so yeah, just picking up on our audit timeline and scope. So as Claire mentioned and Melinda alluded to, early stages of the FY21 audit. But I think we had a lot of really good momentum here for our planning and interim stage. We held wrap up meetings with the various university local management to just kind of apprise them of status of those specific audits. As we take a group audit approach for the universities with all 4 of the universities being in scope. Effectively a full comprehensive audit of each of those, and then we do targeted procedures over certain accounts at the system office level, primarily the more consolidated items like debt and net assets. I think that one of the big ticket items that we've been working with Melinda and Nancy is working with them. They're going to be finalizing their accounting for the bond refunding that occurred earlier this year, and that's something we're going to look to prioritize ahead of year end. But as we're currently standing, really just still in that planning and risk assessment phase for all 3 of the engagements. looking ahead towards field work, in the kind of traditional September timeframe for the universities, and then October for the CCCs and Charter Oak, and ahead, looking ahead to financial statement issuance, at or around that December audit committee meeting that we're talking to, and hearing that community colleges are in good order, as they're working through their close is great, and I think will allow us adequate time to be able to complete our procedures, with that goal in mind of that mid-December issuance. I'm going to flip now. This is to discuss our significant risks and other areas of audit focus. Really the key highlight here is that we continue to identify tuition and fee and auxiliary revenue as a significant risk. This is primarily because being the key operating revenue, this is a presumed fraud risk in all audits. And so part of what we do is look for incremental procedures to address this significant risk. We're going to similar to prior years, test a sample of revenue transactions for either tuition and fee, meal plan, housing. I'm going to understand the internal controls at the various institutions, and knowing that there's a lot of different departments in play here, walk through specific transactions to ensure the design and implementation of those internal controls. We'll look at student AR, and in particular any write-offs and kind of management's approval process around that. And as well look at the deferred revenue reconciliation, and kind of the interplay between that summer semester, and ensure that any revenue that is recognized relating to the summer is done so appropriately. Switching gears a bit, another key audit area, but not a significant risk that we've identified, is grant revenues and grant receivables. I think Melinda had a very good point. There is a lot of nuance to the accounting for the various grants that have come around in response to COVID. So I think really our key test here is going to be detailed transaction testing of grant revenues with I think a particular focus on any HERF monies that were received in FY21. And then lastly, another key area of audit focus is the adoption of GASB 84. Melinda mentioned this earlier, and Claire is going to go into it in a bit more detail from a technical perspective later on. Just as a reminder, this is fiduciary duties, and really working with management to understand their risk assessment, their interpretation of the guidance, and then ultimately work through to presentation and disclosure within the financial statements, and ensuring that those disclosures are complete and accurate.
And maybe actually I'll just spend a quick minute on 84 right now while we're talking about it. Essentially, as Melinda said, there are certain activities that the universities and community colleges take on as a fiduciary or an agency of outside parties. And essentially the way that it's currently manifested in the financial statements is that you may have some form of asset, typically cash, some sort of a cash account, and the offset to that is typically a liability. And you just run any activity through the cash and the liability account. So as you collect cash, let's say, for example, a student activity club of some kind, or booster club, alumni club, something like that, student government, but it varies across the universities, but something like that where it's not actually cash that is owned by the university, you're just holding it as a convenience or as a favor to another organization, and you essentially offset it with a liability. What GASB 84 is saying is that if you meet certain criteria, you're actually going to have to present a separate statement, a separate balance sheet, and a separate P&L for those fiduciary activities. And as you can imagine, that's adding a lot of new information to the already voluminous financial statements that you have. And so management is in the process of evaluating what accounts or what activities would meet the criteria of being a fiduciary activity. Luckily, the GASB was kind enough to create one exemption, which says essentially if the turn of your activity in the cash account or the liability account is less than 90 days, so if you hold on to those assets for less than 90 days, then you can exclude that activity from this this new standard. What they're saying is that they're expecting certain activities to have a quick turn. And so they recognize you don't need to put a full set of balance sheet and P&L activity into your existing financial statements for those accounts that turn fairly quickly. The other, I'll say exemption, which is always something to consider, is materiality. So if there is a certain activity that's determined to be fiduciary activity and it doesn't meet the first exemption that I mentioned of a 90-day turn, then you can also look at whether the information, the financial activity is material to the overall financial statements, whether it's the community colleges, Charter Oak, or the university system. My suspicion is that you won't have much, if any, fiduciary activity that is going to be material. First of all, you probably won't have much that doesn't get exempted from the 90-day exemption. But if there are activities that are beyond 90 days, that you hold the assets for more than 90 days, my guess is it's going to be immaterial. So although it is important to recognize that there is an adoption of a new accounting pronouncement this year, my hunch is that it will be immaterial and you won't end up seeing it in the draft financial statements that you review for December. Go ahead.
So, yeah, I'll pause there for any questions. All right,
The immateriality is by individual activities, not in the aggregate, I take it.
The materiality is assessed at the financial statement level. So for example,
That's enough, I understand. So you'd have to have separate financial statements, not great. So it's unlikely in the extreme.
Exactly.
Great. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you for the question.
All right, so hearing no others, I'm going to turn it over to our colleague Chris Bradford, who's going to walk you through the next slide here. This is page 8 of 39 of the deck, just for anyone flipping along. Chris, you might be on mute.
Oh, thanks. Can you hear me now?
Perfect.
Okay, great. So, as Claire mentioned, a lot of these other areas of focus are going to be pretty consistent with last year. So I won't go super in depth, but let me know if there's any questions. So starting out, one area is the net pension and OPEB liabilities. And for this, we review management's methodology and journal entries. We also review the reports issued by the auditors of public accounts and then perform testing over the census data. Continuing on, another area of focus, we have state appropriations, which involves sending out confirmations with the state and reconciling the amounts to the GL. For capital assets, we'll perform a roll forward over capital asset balances and then perform testing if there is material additions during the year. For cash and cash equivalents, we'll also confirm these balances and reconcile to the GL. And then finally, we have the management override of controls, which is a presumed fraud risk and automatically something we consider a significant risk in every audit. So part of our procedures for this, we consider the design and implementation of entity level controls. We've also performed interviews and fraud inquiries with individuals inside the financial reporting process and also in other areas just to make sure they're not aware of any fraud or were asked to record any unusual journal entries. And then finally, at year end, we'll perform our journal entry testing where we'll obtain the journal entry listing and perform a series of extractions to identify any significant or unusual entries for testing.
And just, I'll pause for a moment. Within the work that we've done so far as of interim, there's nothing that we've identified in terms of the inquiries that we've made or any of the other reviews that we've done. I would assume that, and management hasn't made us aware of any fraud. If the members of the Board of Regents Audit Committee are aware of anything that you think we should know about, now would be an appropriate time to mention it to us, or if something arises after this meeting, you know where to contact us. So hearing nothing on that, the next couple of slides, sort of just wrapping things up, we do involve our IT audit specialists in the audit process, and they focus on the general ledger for the 3 separate entities. So they do make certain inquiries. They talk to T every year, Joe Tolosano, and make certain inquiries that are focused on cybersecurity, overall security, information security, access controls, operations, all those things that are important in the IT environment. So we will, as we have every year, we will provide an update or a report, sort of verbal report on the results of the IT inquiry process at the September meeting.
Okay, Joe has retired.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So
Good for him.
yes. He quietly retired, and I'm embarrassed to say I cannot remember who his replacement was, but I'm sure you'll be meeting him soon.
Jim Vasquez.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for letting me know. Hopefully my IT people know that. I'm sure they do. So just wrapping things up, Melinda, or well, I guess both Melinda and Ben mentioned the foundations in separate contexts. As you know, we rely on the audits of the foundations that are done by other auditors. So we coordinate with them. We also rely on the work that's done by the state auditor in the context of the pension liability and the OPEB liability. So then the remainder of the deck that we provided does provide some technical updates on accounting standards. We talked about GASB 84 already, and Melinda alluded to GASB 87, which is effective next year, and that's the adoption of the lease accounting standard. The gist of it is you will have a gross up of an asset and a deferred inflow on your balance sheet. And you'll be bringing on leases that were previously just recognized as a current period expense, like a rental expense. You'll be bringing those onto the balance sheet. So we're working with management to make sure that that will be a fairly light lift as much as possible, and that they'll be ready for the adoption next year. It does require a retroactive accounting, so you will have to adjust your 2021 financial statements when we are in fiscal 22. But I think we're in a good position with management to get started on that. So, and then finally, the higher education updates. I won't go through these slide by slide. I guess what I would say at a high level, we're like I'm having this meeting with you today and hearing how things are going at your organization. I'm traveling to a lot of, or not traveling, virtually, I guess, visiting with a lot of my higher education clients in New England and across the country to not only present audit plans, but also to hear how things are going. And I would say overall, when you compare 2020 to 2021, and the 2021 numbers obviously are still very preliminary, but 2021 was a difficult year. If you strip out the government funding that higher education received, the significant government funding that higher education received, if you take that away, enrollment was a huge challenge across both public and private, except for the elite. I'll say probably the obvious, but it was a big challenge for everybody. And I think what everybody's focused on now is getting to this fall of 2021, FY 2022, and not necessarily going back to normal like we had come to expect or come to understand with pre-pandemic experiences on college campuses. I think everybody acknowledges that what students want is a little bit different than what we were providing in the past. So it's getting that right mix of bringing the students back to campus because they want that in-person experience. And frankly, the parents want the students to have that in-person experience, but also taking advantage of what we've learned over the past 16 to 18 months with the technology and the capability of distance education and creating hybrid models. So there's a lot of experimentation with the new technologies, the cost savings that were experienced as a silver lining, I guess I'll say, to the pandemic experience that we all had. So those are some of the things that we're seeing across the industry. And I think cost savings continues to be a focus area, nothing new there. There still continues to be more mergers within higher education. And I think we'll see more of that to come. So that concludes our formal presentation on the audit plan. Again, any feedback that you have in terms of things that you think we need to pay extra attention to, feel free to bring it up now, or again, you know where to find us, and we're happy to have those conversations throughout the next couple of months.
Well, thank you, Claire and Matt and Chris, for the overview. It's a lot of information, lots of changes too, but hopefully we've learned from our past and we'll be moving in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Aviva or Joanne, do you have any questions or comments?
Oh, very good, very clear. I look forward to the next meeting and we get some information, specifics.
Is there, Ben, any other business you want to discuss with us?
I'm happy with the agenda as we've gone through it, or to hearing more from the Grant Thornton and their work. And, you know, we'll keep, I will provide when we have final or close to final versions of the APA audit referenced. I will circulate those to the committee, and those are available probably over the next several months in advance of the next meeting. So you'll see the full there in form to send around.
Okay, thank you. But great job today, team. Given that there's no other business, may I have a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Second? Joanne, I think that's a way, right, Joanne? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we are adjourned. And thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Okay, bye-bye.